Let's bring in now the Republican senator from Indiana, Mike Braun, who has been critical of Chinese business practices in the past. We'll be fair with that, Senator. This is a big deal vote around solar and tariffs, is it not? And if so, how do you see it playing out?
So, Brian, there are so many inherent contradictions in what you've just gone over. And some companies like Apple, many others have bought into that, he called it symbiotic relationship. I think many here in Congress would use a different adjective, but this is all coming home to roost, not only with the Inflation Reduction Act, but let's look at what we did in our own country. China, India, building a coal-fired plant weekly over there. Yeah, they want to produce all the solar panels. We shut down our energy independence, including oil and gas. That's not really sinking over here in terms of a warm and fuzzy business relationship, regardless of what Tim Cook and others that have bought into that. And look at what they've had to sacrifice. They have principles of wanting to pay high labor rates in general. They embrace a lot of the kind of ESG stuff. And then they have the hypocrisy of having to deal with a business partner like China. All that's going to come home to roost in ways that I think are not going to play out in way he'd like it to be, since they've invested so much in a non-handshake business partner, which China is not that.
Well, and the reality about China is that we buy a lot of stuff from them. They actually don't buy that much stuff from us. Obviously, iPhone's a big deal, some cars, scrap metal, some other things like that. It's more of a one-way street. I was simply trying, Senator, to show our very smart and educated audience the moral quandary we nearly have here, right? If you want to accomplish climate goals, you're going to need solar. But is it worth it to put in the solar if it's at the expense of potential human rights violations and dumping and anti-competitive practices? I mean, that's the moral, sort of almost legal question that Congress is going to have to answer next week or whenever it may be with this vote on the tariffs.
And if you saw what happened in the TikTok conversation, I'd use that as a cue in terms of what might happen when we have to take that under consideration. So much of this, they shut down their economy. Look what it did to people that had supply chains there, unrelated to what the relationship might be with Apple and their economy. And that kind of cozying up, trying to get back into business the way things were before. There's been too much bad behavior, not to mention his relationship with Putin and Russia. It's got so many complications. I think supply chain folks would be smart, if they haven't already started it, to make a little distance, not try to do more in a shaky relationship.
Well, listen, to be fair, they're a sovereign nation. You can't blame China for doing what they view as best for China. I was trying to highlight that I think that we figured out during COVID that we, in many ways, can't live without them. They could probably live without us. I'm not sure we could live without them, given the one-way trade flows. I want to turn the topics a little bit, Senator, and get your thoughts. It was a new report out of Goldman Sachs. I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week. It's a long report, 83 pages. I read through it this weekend. Basically, I'll summarize it. Goldman's analysts said that the Inflation Reduction Act could end up costing about 3 to 4 times what we were told, in part because of these uncapped tax credits on some of their programs, particularly around renewable and so-called clean energy. Now, Goldman does note in the note that it could also drive trillions more in energy and climate-related investment. Now, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, probably unsurprisingly, pounced on those Goldman numbers and suggested that if they turn out to be accurate, the numbers around the bill that many taxpayers and voters heard over and over again were simply very wrong and way too low. Your thoughts?
So I've been here a little over 4 years. I come from the real world. Had a little company, became a national one. I understand all this stuff and actually studied economics many, many years ago. Smoke and mirrors here on any of this stuff, especially reconciliation bills where there was no Republican vote. And Brian, we're borrowing now 30 cents on every dollar here. So what they normally do in bills like this, all the cuts, all the revenue generation is going to be 6 years to 10 years out. All the spending occurs immediately. And it's now structuralized what used to be trillion-dollar deficits. They're now $1.5 trillion. All of that was part of what unleashed the inflation bomb that we're dealing with currently. So whether it's hidden investment tax credits that'll probably cost more than what they said they would, I wouldn't be surprised. They've been an appropriator. These bills are all done behind closed doors. The reconciliation's a whole nother form of political enterprising, and we're seeing the results of it. It's blowing up into probably who knows where it's going to end up. It's kind of triggered a little bit of a banking issue. It was undoubtedly, when you had that fiscal dump accommodated by the Fed, going to create inflation that hurts everyone.
Senator, quickly though, you're a former business person, truck manufacturing, truck body manufacturing. Also, by the way, a former registered Democrat, now as a Republican. So a lot of tax credits can be a very useful tool. I'm sure your business and others took advantage of them, correct? To say, you want to build a factory, give me some tax credits, and I'll do it. Otherwise, it won't make economic sense. As a business person, not just a senator, when is a tax credit a good spend for the American public? Because a tax credit means that company is not paying as much in taxes as we would necessarily want, and all we hear about is corporations doing, quote, their fair share.
If we weren't financing the tax credits through our current fiscal policy and deficits that we're running, maybe now and then. But generally, Main Street businesses might benefit across the board from accelerated depreciation. Any investment tax credit is a particular benefit to a particular industry that they're promoting, and most of us don't ever get close to them. That is a slippery slope, especially when you're running now $1.5 trillion deficit. So I say that is picking winners and losers. If you want to do general things that everybody benefits from, then you still have a fiscal cost to that. Sooner or later, we need some political will here to live within our means because we're borrowing from future generations.
Or maybe get some of those tax credits to trickle down to Elkhart, Indiana, right? All those RVs that at some point maybe will go electric. Senator Mike Braun.
I'd rather we get rid of them rather than spread them out even more.
Well, they're here now. Let's see what Senator. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening, sir. Appreciate it.
You bet.